Hello class. We will go over chapter 10 about pricing, and this is another of the tools or the components of the marketing mix, right? So we already talked about product. So let's talk now about price. And price is something that is important because whatever your product is, whatever product features, attributes, distribution methods, etc., you have to come up with a price that is right, at which customers are willing to pay. So for this chapter, we will pursue the following objectives. First, explain the importance of pricing and how marketers set objectives for their pricing strategies. Two, describe how marketers use cost, demand, revenue, and the pricing environment to make pricing decisions. Third, understand the key pricing strategies and tactics that are mostly utilized by companies. Fourth, understand the opportunities for internet pricing strategies. And fifth, describe the psychological, legal, and ethical aspects of pricing. In this video, we will cover learning objectives 1 and 2. So what is a price? Price is the assignment of value or the amount the consumer must exchange to receive the offering. So price is subjective to some extent. Of course, you can you will establish a dollar value, but it is subject to different qualitative influences, right? It considers value, which is a subjective concept, and sometimes price is not necessarily a monetary value. Sometimes you will exchange goods or services, right? Like in a bartering situation. Sometimes you will request votes, right? Like if you are a political organization, what you want from your consumers or from the public that you try to convince is not for them to pay you, but for them to vote, right? Like in the 2016 elections, and then more recently these 2018 elections, right? Where you had Ted Cruz and Beto O'Rourke competing. Well, they want the voter to go and cast the vote in the ballot. So pricing considers opportunity cost because you have a limited budget, right? Like a household or you like an individual consumer, and most of the times you consider what you could do with that money that you are paying instead of purchasing that good or service. There are a set of stages for planning the price strategy in an organization. The first step or stage is, first of all, have clear price objectives. Then estimate the demand, right, of your good or service that you will offer. Determine the costs, right, especially when you have new products launched into the market that you don't have a cost structure predetermined. Then number 4, examine the pricing environment, and then choose a pricing strategy and then tactic. So step 5 is determine what to do at the strategic level, while step 6 is determining what to do more at the tactical level. So talking about the first step, we have to remember that companies do their planning and establish broad um, business um, objectives, such as what we cover in chapter 3. If you remember, when we talk about strategic planning and then functional planning, well, we said that businesses set up objectives as to where they want their business to go based on their business plan. If you remember, one of those um, conceptual models that we revised was the product market growth matrix, in which we look at different growth strategies that businesses often pursue. And we said, well, sometimes the direction of the company, as reflected in the business plan, is to go after a market penetration strategy, which is sell existing products to existing markets. But sometimes you want to develop new product for those existing markets, right? That will be a product development strategy. Sometimes other firms will opt for market development strategy, which is sell the same product, existing products, to new markets of consumers, or diversification, offering new products, developing new products for new markets. So each of these different growth strategies that firms pursue require different pricing objectives, right? For example, you may have organizations that have profit objectives in terms of their pricing decisions. So what they are interested is in maximizing return on investment, the ROI. Well, if you have, for example, a hotel that is going to open and is going to be built here in Corpus Christi, and you have the investors who have a predetermined return on investment that they want to accomplish, that will determine what is the hotel room rates that you should have during the next few years in order for those investors to get their return of their investment, right? So if it's a higher ROI that is expected, then the price for the rooms should be sold higher, uh, depending, of course, on the length of time, or on how many years you want that investment to be covered. Like if it's gonna be in 7 years, in 10 years, in 15 years. Well, the shorter the time period that you want to get that ROI, the more the higher the price for each room will have to be, right? For example, sometimes the companies will have not profit objectives, but sales or market share objectives. Here, the focus is not necessarily or not exclusively on the return on investment, but on the level of sales, on the volume of sales that you want to achieve. We saw in this growth strategies matrix that we just went back on chapter 3, the market penetration strategy, which is selling to the same customers the existing product that you have, but you want them to buy more. You want them to buy more frequently. You want them to buy higher quantities. So maybe you will, as a manager, decide to follow this market share objective. And that will require, for instance, reducing the prices, offering discounts and sales promotions. Why? Because that will allow the business to increase market share. Market share is an important concept, and this is related to these um, sales objectives. This is the percentage of a market which could be based on units or revenue in terms of sales, uh, the percentage of a market accounted for by a specific firm, product lines, or brands. So for example, if in your classroom you ask all your classmates what is the smartphone that they have, and you maybe find out that 60% of them have Apple iPhone, like an iPhone, and 25% has Samsung, and then the rest has some other brand. Well, then you have those percentages of market share for Apple brand, for Samsung, and for Sony, or for the other brands that you are talking about. So when we talk about market share, we are looking at a percentage based either on sales units or the revenue obtained that is accounted for by a specific firm. And the same thing you can do, I mean, this is by industry or product category. The same thing you can do with soft drinks, right? Coca-Cola versus Pepsi. The same thing you can do with shoes brands like Nike and Adidas and Converse and all the other brands. So what is the percentage, the market share that those brands have in their respective product categories? Another objective is that, which is called the competitive effect objectives. Here, companies make decisions of in terms of pricing as a response or taking into consideration what a competitor does. This is something very common in sectors, in industries where you have very clearly defined competitors, right? Where you have a clearly defined player that you are competing against. I just mentioned Pepsi and Coca-Cola in the soft drinks sector, right? In that product category. So you respond to your competitors based on what you feel is better to counter their marketing strategies. Another pricing objective is the customer satisfaction objective, and this one basically focuses on what your customers consider is the right price. So you usually keep certain price level based not exclusively on profit considerations or market share considerations or what the competition does, but mostly on keeping your customer happy. This image that you see here on this slide is a candy bar brand in Japan, and it's a popular candy bar that has the company has kept the same price for so many years until recently that they had to increase the price. And well, what they were doing before increasing the price was to follow a customer satisfaction goal of keeping the price at certain low level. But when they had to increase it because of the cost or production went up, then they had the company coming out to apologize to the public, to their customers, and they launched a commercial for apologizing to consumers for increasing the price. So this is a company that was focused on this customer satisfaction price objective. And this link that you have here is a link to that video that they of the commercial that they launched. I'm not going to play it now, but you can do that when you check the slides in Blackboard if you want. There is another price objective, which is image enhancement. Maybe you are in a product category that sells a exclusive higher end product, luxury brand, for which your objective is regardless or not exclusively focus on what the competition does or customer satisfaction or market share. What you want is to establish a price level that is consistent with the image enhancement goal that you want for your luxury product. So you have 5 different pricing objectives, which are the most common. You have profit objective, you have market share objectives, competitive effect, customer satisfaction, and image enhancement. Which one is gonna work better or is the most appropriate? Well, again, it depends on what are those broader, higher level business goals that the organization has. And not only that, but there are other factors that have to be taken into account, which are both quantitative and qualitative, that will influence which strategy is better. Those factors are costs of producing the good or service, the expected demand, the expected revenues, and the pricing environment. So for this second step, which is estimating the demand, we have to refer back to your economic classes. Remember supply and demand curve. So let's just briefly go back to refresh your memory on this. Remember, demand is the customer's desire for a product, which is expressed on the quantity that the public purchases of that product. If you see here this slide, you have the demand curve, this one that is kind of red. So this is a basic principle that it applies in general, ceteris paribus, they say in economics, maintaining all other factors equal. Whenever the price is high, the demand of a product, the quantity demanded is low, right? It is lower than when the price goes down. If the price goes down, like in this case, moving from $3 on the left-hand side to $1 on the right-hand side, there is a change in demand. So that's not hard to understand, right? If a product is more affordable, something you can pay for more easily, then you will have more people willing to buy it. This is from the perspective of the consumer, right? And we see this here in a way that works for probably the majority of the product categories, but there are certain products, as we see on this right hand side figure, prestige products, luxury products like the Rolex watch that we just saw a couple of slides ago, for which not always that pattern that you see on the left hand side figure works, right? Sometimes if you have a luxury product in a category of exclusive brands, you may have, for example, a price level at $700, and if you lower the price, then the demand will increase, right? The quantity here would be 60 units demanded at $700. So if you reduce the price, this curve moves to the right. So the quantities increase to, for example, $80. Sorry, 80 units of the product demanded at a price of $500. But it doesn't mean that if you reduce the price further, the demand will continue to increase. No, in this case, if you reduce the price from $500, the demand will not increase towards the right, but it will decrease toward the left. Why? Because there is a perception that maybe the product is not so good. Maybe the product is cheap. The quality is not the one that customers expect. So this is a psychological effect. Maybe the product has the same quality, the same materials and everything else, but in the minds of consumer, a prestige product has to be priced at a higher level. Otherwise, it loses maybe its appeal. Maybe it has nothing to do with the quality or material, but maybe what happens is that you will have a affordable product that more people will be having access to, and therefore is not so attractive for all segments of market, right? Some target markets, they want products that are unique, that very few people have, so they want bragging rights, right? Not everybody is able to have this brand, so when you make it more popular or accessible to more people, then you have a decrease in the appeal of that brand. So what you want to do as a marketer is influence these demand curves. You want to shift or change the direction in which these curves move by stimulating those changes through marketing activities. So for example, if you have, like here on this curve on the left hand side, this line, which is kind of blue or pink, I don't see well the color, at a certain price, like $60, you have a quantity demanded of 80 units that are demanded by the public. What can you do to increase the quantity demanded without reducing the price? Because yeah, you can do a sales promotion and price discount, but that will represent, or that will generate lower profits, right? The revenues will probably increase, but the profit will be sacrificed. So you want maybe to increase the quantity demanded without reducing the price. What do? You want to move that curve to the right hand side, shift it to the red line. Well, you can do something with your marketing mix. For example, you can change the product attributes and features, right? You want to add some new benefits, the packaging, the color, the ingredients, the functionality, the quality. Maybe you do something regarding your distribution channels. You start selling it through different retailers that you did not sell it through in the past. You perhaps launch a aggressive advertising campaign, right? A communications or public relations campaign that makes more customers aware of that product, and therefore if they like it, they go and buy it. But you didn't change the price. You had to do investments in something else. So if you want to estimate the demand, of course there are different methodologies and different approaches to do this, but one of the most common, especially for retail establishments like stores and restaurants, would be like what you see in table 10.1, right? Let's say you want to open a new branch or a new store or restaurant in Corpus Christi. So you, and by the way, this is about doing market research, right? We talk about that in chapter 4 and 5. So you have to find out, well, how many people live in the area, number of families in that specific market, and then based one more time on research or some other data source that you have, or your own experience as a manager or marketer in this industry, what's the average number of pizza per family that they purchase per year? And that way you can do a simple multiplication and come up with a annual market demand. So you may say, this market we are talking about, we have a estimated demand of over 1 million pizzas per year. a little bit over 1 million. So that's for the whole market, for the pizza that they purchase from all businesses, from all restaurants, not only from the one you will your business. So then you have to estimate how much out of that total market demand per year will be captured by your business, by your pizza restaurant. So you will say, well, out of those 1,080,000 pizzas that we estimate will be purchased, we can predict that 3% out of those will be our market share, right? Because the other 97% will go to other stores, to other restaurants, to other places that people can buy pizza. And that gives us a estimated company demand of 32,400 pizzas, right? These are fictitious. This is a simulated demand estimation, and that's something that you can break down per month, and you can break down per week, and that'll tell you information as to what are the costs for producing those pizzas that customers are going to demand. Right now, there are other factors that again, we have to look not only at numbers, not only at dollars and cents, but you have to look also at qualitative factors. There are different products in different industry categories that have different levels of price elasticity in terms of demand. Remember, price elasticity is the percentage change in unit sales that results from a percentage change in price. In other words, you have products for which the demand is elastic, which is when changes in price have a large effect on the amount demanded, and other products for which demand is inelastic, when changes in price have little or no effect on the amount demanded. So what type of product categories are elastic? Well, maybe you can think of products that are not a first need, right? Maybe movie theaters. Well, movie theater is something that you go for entertainment, for leisure. Nothing happens if you don't go to the movie theaters. If you don't have money, you don't go. So if the price of movie tickets goes up, then maybe you will stop going to the movie theaters because it's not something you must do. But for example, if you are taking a medication that you need for your health, then even if the price goes up, maybe you'll still be willing to pay for it, right? Because you must take that medication for your health. So in that case, if the price goes up, but still you have a continuous demand that doesn't move, does not decrease, then you have an inelastic demand, right? So the price does not significantly change the demand. Here you have a couple of examples of elastic demand. These are some examples you have in your textbook, and here basically it shows, continuing with the example of pizzas, how if you change the pizza price from $10 to $9, well, that's a reduction of $1, which is 10% change in the price or reduction. And that reduction in price moves or shifts the demand from 2,700 pizzas per month to 3,100 pizzas per month. So what's the difference? The increase is 400 pizzas. Reducing $1 of the pizza price increases the number of units demanded, the number of pizzas that people buy, 400 more. So you use this formula, the percentage change in quantity demanded over the percentage change in price, that'll be 15%, which is the change in the demand, over 10%, which is the change in the price. and that gives you a result of 1.5. Whenever this result, the result 1.5 in this case, whenever the result is higher than 1, it means that you have elastic demand. It means that there was the effect on the demand was greater than the change in the price. But sometimes you have inelastic demand. Using the same example, you reduce $1 from the pizza price, and the demand changes from 2,700 per month to 2,835 pizzas per month. So these are 135 more pizzas, which is a 5% change in demand. Using the same formula as the slide before, this is 5% over 10%. 5% is the percentage change in quantity demanded, 10% is the percentage change in price, and the result is less than 1. Here you have 0.5. Whenever the result here is less than 1, you have an inelastic demand. So here what you see graphically in this figure 10.7 is that when you have an increase in price that is less than the increase in the demand or the change in the demand, you have an elastic demand situation. But when the change in the price, as you see here on the right hand side, from P1 to P2 is greater than the change in the quantity demanded from Q1 to Q2, then you have inelastic demand. So these are considerations that have to be looked when you are marketing different products. So there is no a single rule that applies to all brands, to all products. So you have to do a case-by-case analysis. How is this business like? Do we have competitors or not? Because that's something that may influence the way that the product sales perform, right? Sometimes you have cross elasticity of demand, which are the changes in prices of other products that affect your product's demand. So here you have Hellmann's mayonnaise on the slide, and maybe you have H-E-B's mayonnaise, right? Remember we talked last time about private brands, these brands that are sold by Walmart, by H-E-B, they are the store brands. And if you have an increase in Hellmann's price, maybe people will shift their demand towards the H-E-B or Walmart brands because it's lower priced. Sometimes you have that one product is used for manufacturing or producing another product, and that will change the demand for that product. Here you have maybe refrigerators that are built with aluminum, and if the price of aluminum goes up, and that is a major input or material for building refrigerators, then that is perhaps going to affect the demand for refrigerators. So the change in price of a input or a material that is used for another product has effect on the demand of that product. Now in step 3 of this price planning process, we have to look at costs, and this is something I'm not stopping for long. Those of you who are especially in accounting and finance majors, well, you know more about this, and you have to look at what are the fixed costs and the variable costs, right? Those costs that are variable, which are costs of production that will fluctuate depending on how many units are produced, like how many pizzas are produced. The more pizzas you produce, the higher the variable cost. But there are other costs which are fixed, and they do not vary. You have rent on the building, electricity, water, insurance, some cost that you have to pay. Does not matter how many pieces are produced. So those are things that have to go into the equation, right? And those are things that you want to look at how you make that more efficient, right? Here in figure 10.8 in your textbook, you have 3 different scenarios of fixed costs, and variable costs according to their level of production. So in the first scenario on the left, you have the cost to produce 100 units or bookcase is $500, right? But the cost to produce 200, which is double, will be 5,000 times 2. But that is not a linear relation. It doesn't mean that if you go up 100 units of production more, it will always go up by $5,000 increase in the cost. In the third scenario, you have that the cost for producing 500 units, which is more than double that 200, is 20,000. So you are producing more than double of the 200 units, but at the cost of $20,000, which is double of 10,000. What happened? Well, what you did was taking advantage of economies of scale. By taking advantage of these economies of scale, you are able to be to run a more efficient operation, maybe because you are able to arrange a better contract with suppliers, and you buy the wood as a unitary price for lower, right? Here on the first 2 scenarios, it was $13.25 per unit, but maybe by purchasing larger volumes of wood to the supplier, you get a price reduction. The same thing with the nails, the same thing with the paint. And maybe you increase or you invest in some new machine or equipment or technology that allows you to reduce labor, right? So these are the type of decisions that have to be looked upon, so that the price planning allows you to come up with the break-even point. What is the analysis that you have to do so that you can determine how many units must be sold to cover all costs? Because that's ultimately what you want to do. I mean, why are we looking at fixed costs and variable costs and supply and demand? Well, we want to estimate how much people are going to be demanding our product and at what price we can sell it that will cover the costs that were required to produce it. Because if you cannot meet that break-even point, then you would maybe decide not to go ahead, not to launch that new product, not to open that new production line. So in this example here, we see that the break-even point would be selling 4,000 units at a price of $100 each unit, and this will give us $400,000 of revenue just to break even. If we sell more than those 4,000 units, then we will start getting some profit. But if we don't get to that break-even point, if we sell less than 4,000 units at that price, then we are going to be losing money. So this is something that you want to do in advance, right? As much as possible, with as much accuracy as you can. Of course, sometimes it's not possible to have all the data, all the information, all the scenarios straight, but it's better than to do it in an approximation way, in an approximate way, rather than not doing it at all, right? So that's what you want to do, and that will let you determine what is the markup that you will establish, what is the amount that you will add to the cost of the product to increase, sorry, to come up with the price that will be paid either by the final consumer or by the members of the distribution channel, right? Because sometimes you will be a restaurant or you will be a service provider who you sell directly to the consumer, to the final consumer, but sometimes you will be a manufacturer and you will distribute your products through members of the distribution channel, through wholesalers, through retailers, and those members of the channel have also to set up their margin, a wholesaler margin, a retailer margin, or a gross margin. In this figure 10.10 in your textbook, you can see that scenario in which you have a manufacturer who has certain costs to produce their units. So they say, well, we will sell at $11.20 to the wholesaler. The wholesaler will purchase that unit or that product at that price, $11.20, and that's the cost that they incur, and they will distribute this to the retailer and therefore sell it for a higher price, not for $11.20. Otherwise, they wouldn't have any profit, any margin. So they sell it for $14. So in that way, they have a profit margin of 2.80 or a wholesaler margin. And then the retailer who purchased it at $14 from the wholesaler has to sell it to the final consumer, to the final customer at a higher price. And in this scenario, it's 30% more of, it's a 30% margin, retailer margin, for a final price of $20. So all this price increase that went from $11.20 all the way to $20, those are the margins for the participants in the distribution channel. And step 4, remember, these are not decisions that occur in a vacuum, isolated from what goes on in your industry. In chapter 2, we look at different factors that have to be considered, and here we are listing them again. The economy, you have to look at competition, regulations by the government, consumer trends, the international environment, etc. So I'm going to stop here, and we will continue with the rest of this chapter next time.